Morning all, welcome to the Broken Biscuit Repair Shop. Working on this fella at the moment, which is a 1:1 scale human skull. The other end of this, which is Boxwood. Incredibly hard, very heavy timber. Now got to the point where I'm going to unhinge the jaw. So I've now got a saw through this bit here, which is the hinge, and then separate between the teeth, and hopefully the jaw will come off in one piece. So what I'm going to do is take a thread saw blade, which is quite fine, and what I'm going to do is cut that end off, because I'm not going to attach it to a frame, because the frame won't fit inside the skull. So we're going to get rid of that. Wrap that bit, because that's the bit I'm going to hold in my hand. People often ask me, what tools do you use? And I don't think they believe me a lot of the time. I say, well, I make them. You find a way or you make one. So it's quite often. Right, so now what I've got to do, put these back on, because I am actually blind as a bat. I can't see what I'm doing without them. So I do rely on magnification these days. So we're going to put them separating the teeth. Which, as you can imagine, takes quite some time. You can see what I'm trying to do. Just very carefully saw this line from the outside through the inside. That takes a while, but nothing about skull carving is easy. If it was, we'd all be doing it. So I work slowly. Keep an eye on the line of the cut, because you can very quickly start to drift into the teeth, and then you're doing more harm than good. So we have to check that we're not damaging the teeth I've already carved, and we're only cutting the gap. So as you can imagine, that's going to take me some time, but that's how it'll be done. So I'm going to finish sawing through there. I won't bore you with the details, because you'll have an hour and a half video of me doing that, which is no good to man or beast. I'll tackle the hinges last. I like to leave those on so I've got some solidarity to the jaw. I've cut them off before, and if you start cutting around the front here, when you get narrow, you break out a tooth, which I'm going to do eventually. Several of the teeth will be knocked out, taken out, and made to look more natural. I work from genuine skulls, and very rarely have they got a complete set of teeth, and I like the pathology of missing teeth, the holes in the roots, signs of infections and abscesses. So I plan to include as much of that in a carving as I can. So you won't have a full set of teeth, so I'm not going to be too precious, and if some get snapped out or damaged, then they've already selected themselves for removal at the end. We're not far off now. We've got 3 or 4 teeth holding fast. Very close. What, you swine? It's literally about 2-3 millimeters holding on. We're nearly there. Well, you couldn't be any closer. Right, I just heard a click, so I'm going to take it. Yes, we're through. Lovely. Good. I've now got to do the same through the hinges, then this will come away. Why, when people say to me, what tools do you use? I'll often say practice and patience, because it is slow going. It takes as long as it looks like it does. So it's a game of practice and patience. Tools help, but none of them do anything until you put it in your hand. So it's practice, study, practice, and a lot of failure. They don't all turn out like this. I've had many years of attempts and fails to get to this stage. It takes quite a bit of confidence to carve something to this extent and then risk a move like this. You need to know it's going to work, because it's taken me 4 days, I think, to get to this stage. So it's no small investment. If you bugger it up now, I mean, there's very little that can go wrong with the skull. Worst that would happen is the jaw breaks, and then I've got to carve a new jaw. It's not impossible, but it's all time used and time spent. I mean, this is eventually it'll be for sale, so the amount of time I put into it will bear some value into the final price. So I don't want me spending a whole another week trying to make a new jawbone if I've already got one. And that'll be the jaw off. And after that's off, I can then get into here and do a lot more work under there. I've gone in as far as I can reach, but you're in a very tight spot and you've got a long reach to get where you need to be cutting, so getting leverage and accuracy is becoming impossible. So by getting the jaw out of the way, we can then go under there and complete a similar arrangement to that, which is where a lot of skull carvers fall short. They'll all concentrate on the face, but you get underneath and they will just stop. You see many beautifully carved skulls and just flat underneath, and to me that's an opportunity wasted. You've got so much going on under there. To leave that out, I think, is a real shame. If you're going to carve skulls, carve the whole thing, not just the face. I don't think that does enough. So if I'm carving a skull, I'm carving every surface, because they're all relevant. They all do something. The skull is not just a shapely object. It's, yeah, it's an iconic image, looks great on a shelf, but there's so much more to the form and function of a skull. So the cranial floor, this is the neck part. To me, this is as beautiful as the face on any skull. It needs study, it needs to be captured, it needs to be carved. I don't think you can ignore this. And same on the top. You know, you see a lot of skulls carved and they're just a ball, rounded and polished. Well, you never find a skull in the world that looks like that. They've all got these shapes and facets and just details that most people can't be bothered with. But I make sure that if I'm carving a skull, I'm carving all of it, because to me it's all very relevant and all part of the story, the beauty of a skull. It's not just a ball with 2 dents and a set of teeth. It's got to be all of the skull or none of the skull. So that's why I'm putting this much time and effort into gaining as much access to the underside as I can. Could have just left it solid and carved a face on it, perfectly good as a skull, sit on a shelf. 9 times out of 10, no one's ever going to notice, but I like mine to be picked up and looked at. People look underneath and go, oh my goodness, you've gone in there, what's this bit? And that, I think, is where the difference should be. To most people, it's not a familiar sight. not many people could tell you what was under their own skull. I mean, it's not something we're familiar with, but I am. I spend a lot of time carving skulls, studying skulls, handling skulls, so this is all familiar to me, but to the layman, that is something none of us have ever seen. It's not a place most of us go, so I include that in the art, and I hope that shows and that makes a difference. I sell a lot of my work to doctors, surgeons, radiologists and dentists, people who can see that the skulls are properly researched and studied, and that I've included all the little pieces they're familiar with that no one else is. So yeah, right, my camera's fallen over, so I'm gonna switch off and get these cut. As we're gonna gnat's whisker. Let's see what I'm up against though. Look, the blade is right up against the interior of that arch, so I've only got a couple of millimetres to move in, which isn't really enough to get a good sweeping cut really. But come on, you swine. I'm pretty sure out there somewhere there's a tool that would make this a hell of a lot easier. God, that is close. Yes. That's a gamble, but we'll take it. Ta-da! So we have a mandible. So like you can see now, I can get in here, do all the upper palate, do the back of the teeth, cusps of the teeth, dig in behind, get the gaps right, select the teeth I want out, take them out, then work on the cranial floor, get all the details in here, thin out these arches, work under the orbital sockets, get it all tight and tidy, ready to finish. Same with the jaw. Now it's at that stage. As you can see, I've got to thin it down quite a lot to get to a reasonable shape. So there's a lot more to come off yet, but it's easier done in the hand than it is trying to handle a whole skull. That'll do for today. Select which teeth are coming out next and start that job, but pretty much that's the rough out done. So done a bit of work on the teeth now. We've got those set where they need to be. So next job is to saw tiny little gaps between each tooth. So for that I'm going to use my jeweler's saw. And the gaps in teeth are another thing a lot of people get wrong. You can overdo it. If you look at real teeth, quite often they touch. So you don't want a massive gap, but you want some gap. So it's a balance. Now these blades are absolutely tiny, to the point I can barely see them. Give us a nice smooth gap. They are epoxy to fit, but once they're in, they're good. Alright, that's set, ready to go. So now, very gently and very carefully, saw between each tooth. You'll see I've already mined out the gaps. I just want to break these little bridges. As always, it's an epoxy fiddly task. Everything with skull carving is, but it's these little details that make all the difference at the end of the day. So. You always want to be mindful of the rest of the blade, because if you start sawing into your work where you didn't mean to, that is quite infuriating. We've all done it. Carried away watching the cut, not watching what this end is doing, and you end up with more cuts in your work than you meant to. Come on out, you bugger. Right. Again, teeth are something a lot of skull carvers ignore. Much like I spoke about the cranial floor yesterday, I think there's as much work in a set of teeth as there is in the rest of the skull. Literally, it should take you just as long to carve the teeth as it does to do the entire face. It's one of the most important features in a skull, simply because it shows very few people are that familiar with a skull that they recognise when you put a fault in it. But teeth, we all know teeth, because that's one part of the skull we can always see, and we're familiar with. You know, brush your teeth every day, you see people laugh and smile, and you're going to see their teeth. So they're a familiar part of the skull, and if you get those wrong, that will show up. So you have to put the hours into the teeth, because they are the bit that will let you down. And I'd say so many skull carvers skip over the teeth entirely. They'll just go and, you know, top set match the bottom set. It looks like a horse tooth. You don't you don't get any feeling of reality for that. You need teeth that match up but don't match up. You need the wonky ones, you need the missing ones, you need that. The line isn't straight, it curves up round. You've got to have these details to get reality, or you're just shortcutting. So I try and make sure that the teeth are as accurate as I can do. I was very lucky a few years ago. I had a dentist in New York sent me some plaster casts. Like I say, I always work from real skulls, but a lot of the time they don't have the teeth in them. So to have these as a reference is really helpful, because you've got all the cuspid details, top and bottom. There's another set somewhere. He did send me 2 sets. So these are just really handy little references. So you know, I use these quite a lot. I usually set out with a full set. Like I say, I've done these, and I'm going to cut some of them out. So maybe the wisdom is I could have saved myself a lot of time and not bothered making each tooth perfect. But to me, that's important. I want to know that it had the teeth, take out the ones I want to take out, and create that look of decay and age and time and tide by carving it, not shortcutting it. So yes, I've done a lot of work in some of these teeth, and they're going to be dust by the end of the day. I'll cross them off and then cut them out, drill the holes up, make sure that it's as lifelike as it can be. But to start with, he has got a nice set of jumpers. So the other thing with teeth is, if you get 1 or 2 slightly wrong, it doesn't matter. You won't find many mouths in the world that have got a perfect set of teeth in them. So quite often, if you've got one that's a little bit wonky or a little bit out of line, it just looks like a real person, which I quite enjoy. Quite a lot of the time I see skull art and it's too perfect, there's no life in it. A lot of people look at a skull and instantly they see death. Well, I see the life once lived. It's these little hallmarks that make us who we are, which I try and capture and try and emulate in the work that I do. I don't want them picture perfect. Quite like the imperfections of nature. So Right. Separate each tooth. So my next plan of attack, I'm going to take some emery paper, 600 grit, so there's plenty of bite to it. Take a little strip of that. With that, I can then sand the gaps. So with that, I'll go around, clean up each tooth, get nice and smooth and clean in between, floss him out good, and should start to take shape then. There's a job for the dust mask though, so I'll suit up and get that done, show you when I'm finished. Right. So, there we have some gabby teeth. So next job is to decide which ones are going and which ones are staying, and knock some teeth out. Mark out the ones that are coming out. Now, one or two of them have already started to select themselves. Where I've worked across the grain, there's a couple here that have got natural cracks in them, so we'll start with them, they can go. I'll leave two, I'll take out one of the front ones. I think I'm going to lose the wisdom tooth molars at the back. So we'll take out that one, that front one, and these two canines. That should be a nice little balance. That one, that one. I think that one. So I've marked 3 on the bottom jaw to go. That one there, that one and that one. Give us a nice gappy grin. All I've done is sawn out each tooth. The next job will be to riddle out the sockets, make the root holes, socket holes, and start breaking up the gum line a bit, make it look a bit more worn in and lived in. Then we'll do the cusps on top of the teeth last, polish them up. You should have a decent set of teeth. With what's left. Morning all, right, welcome back, and what are we, day 7 now I think. So yeah, it's a long game and it's been a marathon, but we're getting there now. You can see what I've done at the jawbone here. I've got the roots bored in, giving it some character, a bit of life, and the same on here. Those teeth removed last night, I've given realistic root holes. So he's now starting to shape up quite nicely. So yeah, today's job is establish the cranial floor. Quite detailed, so I've got a lot of little nooks and crannies to work out and get in. I've got to drop this occipital portion down a bit and work on these what they call a mastoid process, which is basically what holds your head on, allows you to move it about. Muscle anchors, basically. You've got big muscles on them that hold your head where it is, but they need shaping and refining they're quite big. On a male skull they are quite big. Like this old boy, he's got quite pronounced ones, so I need to take a little more off these, shape this portion here. I'm going to give him a what they call an occipital protrusion, which is a small ridge of bone right at the back. Again, that's a muscle anchor. That's where your muscles up the back of your neck basically attached to that. He's got a small nubbin of one, but old Harry here has got quite a pronounced one, so I'm gonna base this on old Harry and give him a occipital protrusion. See, I better explain a little more about my my friends here who helped me out. This one I call Old Harry, which is the name he had when he came to me. Now, Old Harry was found under the floorboards of a police station in North London. They did some refurbishment in the 1980s. And the workman brought him down at the front desk and said to the sergeant, "We found a body." And it was Harry. He'd been put under the floorboard sometime in the mid-1800s. As a joke, basically. Somebody thought it'd be funny to put a skull under the floorboards in a police station, I guess. So Harry went to CID, where he was examined and held there for a little while. And they brought him back and said, given the fact that he'd been medically sawn and he had very nice little brass catches added, and he's got these little catch on the side that will top his head on. They said features like that rarely appear in a murder scene. So they were fairly sure that old Harry was a medical specimen taken from a college or a school or doctor's office or something like that, and basically placed there for jokes. And CID brought him back, gave him to the desk sergeant and said, "There you go, put that in the bin." And luckily he had the foresight and the wisdom to take Harry home and give him a home. So for 40 years Harry lived on his bookshelf with his family. His children grew up around Harry and he was part of the household ornaments. And a few years ago he messaged me and said, "Do you want to give Harry a home? Can he come and stay with you?" So I said, "Yeah, definitely. I'm always up for taking in an orphan skull." So yeah, I took old Harry in, and whoever he was, we'll never know. But his face has appeared in many carvings, and he's been part of my reference set for a few years. And all of the skulls that I own here have come here by similar means. Other artists have sent them to me, and they're all vital to what I do. They're very important references. I used to work with my plastic skull that I brought on eBay when I first started, which is fine. You can get a long way with that, but you can't see how they're put together and what they were like in life in a plastic one. It's just not the same. You can't get the variation of features for one thing. They're all fairly standard. So these have become very valuable to what I do. This fella here was sent to me from Florida. Silversmith out there contacted me, I don't know, 6 years ago maybe. Said, "I've got a skull on the shelf, beautiful as it is, I don't really need it, I don't use it. Is it any good to you?" So I said, "Well, yeah, send him over." And he turned up. And the story went, he was in a college in Florida. Some students got drunk one night and took him out to the hockey rink and used him as a puck, which is where he lost all his teeth. Also his skull cap, apparently that went down a storm drain and was forgotten about. When the pieces were picked up, they threw him in the bin, or dumpster as they call it there. One of the college staff fished him out because she was quite fond of him, and gave him to my friend, and he had him on his shelf for decades and decided he could come and live with me and be used in my artwork. So this fella turned up. He's been here ever since. So I don't know who he is or who he was. I mean, most of them are unfortunates. Maybe homeless people or destitute people, and when they died, their bones were worth more than a funeral was. So quite a lot of the time they were used as medical specimens, which this one is because he's clear cut across the top. Many were taken from Asia, India, parts of China in late 1800s, early 1900s. It was quite a lucrative trade that, you know, people were worth more as a skeleton than they were alive a lot of the time, and a lot of the old medical specimens will be from South Asia. That's a medical one. He's been cut in half, which is interesting for an art perspective, to be able to see inside a skull and see where all these places go. But when you think about, you know, somebody's entire life in my hand here, and that's all that's left of it. So it's quite sad in a way, but I'm just hopeful that in some way the art I do will give some purpose to that, really. And you know, the faces that I'm carving and the features I put in my skulls are from people that lived, people that had names, families and faces, although we'll never know them, which to me is a large part of why I do what I do. That is my job. I mean, I do it for a living, but I still try and remain as sympathetic as I can to that these are human beings. As I touched on earlier in this video, a lot of people will look at a skull and they'll instantly go to death. It's, you know, it's just dead, and that spooks people, it scares people, it puts people off. A lot of people are, ooh, skulls. But to me, it's as, you know, comforting in a way that even at the end, when all life is expended and everything's gone, the bones still remain. There's some beauty in that, that whatever happens in life, you will end up at some point a skull. Quite often it's the last and only piece of the human body that remains. So there's an eternity, a constant in a skull, I always think. Not in every case. I mean, you're cremated, it's all going the same way, but I'm sure if you looked in the oven at some point, all that's going to be in there is the skull. It is the mortal remains. And for a long time, the image of the skull was presented in that way, the memento mori of the 1800s, 1700s, into the 1900s. You often see it on church floors, gravestones, tombstones. There'd be an image of a skull, and it fascinated me when I was a child. I used to go around churches and look for these carved skulls, and I think a lot of what I do now is from those early days of wondering why. I don't know, at some point I was told they were plague graves. Someone else told me they were pirates, and as a child that made sense, but I later found out memento mori was the reason, which is Latin, means be mindful of death, basically. Remember your own mortality. So by using the image of a skull, it reminded decent people that you don't live forever. Your time here is finite. You are going to die. And the idea was, if you kept that in your mind and lived as though you were going to die, you'd live a better life, because you'd try and do the right thing. I mean, a lot of religions have an afterlife, a second chance, but only if you get this one right. So there was some value in that being mindful that you were going to die was a particular mindset. So skull art has been going on for centuries, and that's what I'm trying to capture, and what I'm trying to do with these, that it's not just a dead object, it's a life once lived. It's a portrait. And in the Christian Bible, we're certainly told that God made man in his own image. Well, if that's right, you're going to have to know that the face of God is going to be a skull. Because if we're all born equal and we're all the same, which I don't think many people believe today, it's when we get to this stage where the equality really comes into play. Your mortal remains are the bit that really equalise all of us, no matter who you are, what you earn, what you did, where you lived, where you were born. At some point, this is the end game. So, to me, when I look at the skull, I'm looking at the face of all of humanity. I'm looking at the face of God, if there is such a thing. I think this is where we're going to see him. So when I'm carving skulls, that's where I'm coming from. People, people say, "Ooh, why skulls? That's disgusting." And can you explain it to them? Not really, unless you've got minutes and hours to sit and have a philosophical chat. I don't often get into that with people. And again, I get people say to me, "Can you do one with snakes in its eyes and roses and stuff?" Going down sort of rock music, Guns N' Roses and all that. And I don't generally go in for that. I like my skulls to be anatomical. I like them to be realistic. I like them to be human. So I'm not one for flames and dragons and all the other paraphernalia. If I'm carving a skull, I'd rather go for a realistic portrait of a human that once lived. It's quite important to me. So occasionally I'll add embellishments if somebody really insists. So it's my living after all. I'm not going to turn down bread and butter at the end of the day, but my own personal preference is for something that has a face, a story, a life behind it. It's never lived. What it did, it was a tree, but I mean, it never had that human life. But you've seen the references and the people that have inspired this work of art, so their faces will go on, their story goes on. We don't know their names, we don't know where they were born, we don't know the story. We call him Old Harry, but his name could have been anything. We don't, we'll never know. But if I can capture just one little piece of that, turn it into art, that's what I'm going to do. So today, we're going to crack on, get under there, get some details, start hollowing. I've got a long, slow job of sanding this all down, getting it nice and smooth, bone-like. I'm going to cut the sutures, which are the jigsaw-like joins that you get in the back of skulls, which are quite interesting, intricate details. Always enjoy doing those. So all these little hidden details are all things I'm going to add to this before it's done. So, yeah. Sorry to ramble on, but it is my specialist subject. And I'm quite passionate about it. I don't do this lightly. I love what I do. Going back to Memento Mori, that's why I did it. I realised somewhere around 7 years ago now, you only get one life, you only get one shot at this. If you sit around and wait for things to happen, they don't. You'll wait the rest of your life and it will just pass you by, and one day you're sitting there and you'll look back and say, bugger, I should have done that. And if you haven't, that's regret. I didn't want that. So I made some very drastic changes. I was married for 27 years and I left that arrangement. Quit my job. I worked in farming for the same amount of time. Left my home, left my family, and moved away to pursue the art, because I needed to do this. I was absolutely useless as a farmer, and according to some I wasn't much use as a husband either. But I found a new life and pursued what I wanted to do, making art, and I've been doing this ever since. And it was that mindset: you've got one shot, and when it's gone, that's gone. You don't get a refill. There's no second chances. So if you miss an opportunity, you very rarely see an opportunity coming back the other way. It'll pass and it's gone. So if you don't grab it, it's gone. And that remember death mindset persuaded me that if there's an opportunity, take it. Anyway, we'll get another day in at this and see where we get to today. Cheers for listening. Right, we're getting the cranial floor mapped out now. Let's put the foramen in, the little holes where the various nerve endings and arteries and all the other gubbins that allow us to live and remain connected to the body go in and out. So yeah, next job is to riddle these holes through, create spaces behind them. You've got to try and, what I'm trying to capture is the illusion of it being hollow. On occasions I have sawn the tops off these and hollowed them out, which is lovely, but on this one I want it to be somewhat solid. So I reach in there as far as I can and scoop out all that I can, and the same in these little fossas and foramen. I'll go in behind those and clean out a space to give the illusion of it being hollow. There is some thought that nobody knows what's under there anyway. Quite a lot of the time I've carved skulls and people turn them over and go, oh God, is that really what they look like? Because that's the bit nobody sees or pays any attention to. But as I said before, a lot of my customers are medical professionals, and they know what they're looking at, and they're looking for details that I'll put in, and I'll soon tell you if you've missed it. So I try and make these as close to real underneath as I can, because as I said earlier, the face is one aspect of a skull, but there's so many other surfaces and features that most people miss or don't care to include, basically. But to me they're as important as the face. A skull isn't just a face on a ball. Every feature needs to be captured and respected if you're going to do it properly. Do it that way. So yeah, I spend as much time on the underside as I do on the face, because to me that's as much a unique part of the skull as any of the faces. They're all different. They might not look vastly different, but when you get into them, the features you'll find under a skull tell you as much as the face. They're completely unique. There's a pattern, same as the face. I mean, we know where the nose is, we know where the eyes go, but the features can vary as the face. You can get different depths and protrusions. Even the foramen, the holes, they vary terrifically in size and even spacing. Same as the features of your face. Some people got tiny eyes like a piglet, some people got massive eyes like a barn owl. It's like the variation in the human body is almost well, you know, from people's faces you can get any number of features, any number of shapes and sizes, and so it's the same with a skull, which works quite well because it means it's hard to get it wrong. It may not look exactly right, but some faces don't. I mean, you can have a huge nose and tiny eyes, and just the variation, which is another thing I enjoy with skulls. No two are the same. I pick features from each one of my references, and I'll mix them up and add them together and make up things I've never seen in a real skull. But it's all possible variation, which is one of the things I enjoy about skull art, really. People say to me, do you get bored carving skulls? I said, no, I've never done the same one twice. It's, even if I'm doing a full set of ball balls, which I've done, you've got to do 16 skulls in a row. There's no two are going to be identical. It's going to be, no matter how hard you try, you'll never carve the same skull twice. They'll all be different. They'll all have their own unique features, and just like real skulls, you know. You'll never find two the same. Even if you took identical twins, I could find you variants in the skulls. I can assure you of that. It's not the process of replication that it appears. Yeah, I've been carving skulls now for, I don't know, 12, 15 years. And I've carved dozens of thousands now. I've stopped counting a long time ago, but I've never carved the same skull twice. They're all very different. In the way I do it, once you start going under there, and even the lumps and bumps on the top and the back, you can play with form and function every time and come up with a different skull. It's never going to be a carbon copy of anything I've done before, which I quite enjoy. It gives it variety and gives it character, a little bit of life, you know. Even though this was a piece of a tree, essentially, it's still got the feel of a living thing to it. It looks like it once spoke, kissed, cried, breathed, grieved, all the things that these fellas did. I mean, none of them were simply a skeleton. They all had lives, they all had purpose, they had families, loved ones, trials and tribulations, like all of us. I think you can capture that and put it into the art. That's why I enjoy skullcraft. There's something different in a skull. I could carve any shape, essentially. You know, some people carve elephants, some people carve dolphins, and all manner of beautiful objects. But the skulls, I don't know, to me they mean a little bit more than just a wooden object. They say something. Right, the cranial floor shaped up now. It's been a long morning, but he's starting to look more skull-like now. So he's now starting to resemble what I'd like to see. I've gone now as far as I can reach. I haven't been able to quite get where I want to get yet, but I might have a go at that this afternoon after some dinner. But yeah, that's coming along quite well. Right, got the back of the skull done on the underside. That's the occipital protuberance I was hoping to capture. I've exaggerated it a little bit, which I often do in skull carving. If there's a feature, I like it to be more prominent than it often is in nature, and quite a lot of the time in the finishing it'll be sanded down anyway, so what looks like a a bold move at the moment will settle somewhat with the polishing. So yeah, pleased with that. Starting to smooth up now. You can see why I like to use Boxwood. It is a beautiful wood, and by its nature has a very bone-like appearance. So for skulls, it lends itself really well to this project. See, colour-wise, we're fairly well spot on. I usually use a natural finish, just hard work basically. Get it nice and smooth, nice and clean. Might give it a lick of oil, but other than that, it doesn't need any embellishment, especially for a skull. It doesn't do any favours if it's shiny and varnished. It looks better in the raw, because it looks like bone basically. So yeah, it's unusual to find a piece of boxwood this big. I'm quite lucky. I've got a friend who works as a tree surgeon. He also works for Harry Grafton. He's the Duke of Grafton, who owns Euston Hall, a little way over here in Suffolk. I think Harry is the 11th Duke of Grafton, maybe the 12th. But in the days of Augustus Grafton, so going back to 1760, 1770, he employed Capability Brown, who was the royal gardener, worked for King George at the time, and Harry employed him, Augustus employed him to plant the gardens at Euston Hall. And my friend Tom is still the tree surgeon there, so he gets a nice piece of box, he puts it aside and I gave it off him. So yeah, this is going back 250 years to get this big, which is hard to find. So yeah, it's a rare piece of wood. Before I started, usually something like that would be considered a good piece of box. It's quite large. Again, that's probably well over 100 years to get to that stage. So to find these big bits is quite rare. So I'm lucky that I've got friends who think of me when they're felling trees. So yeah, that's from the one of the logs from the estate. So yeah, I like to have a story with them. It's quite nice to carve things, but it's quite nice if you can tell a story with it. So the fact that it was planted all them years ago and we know who planted it, when and where, that's quite it's quite a special piece of provenance to pass on with the skull, I think. He's taking shape now. I've been sanding him up a little bit. See the grain and the pattern, but I'm not going to go too much further because I've still got to cut the suture lines in, so I'm not going to polish it as such. Just need it smooth so I can see where I'm going. Then I'll pencil them on, cut the lines, get all the details set, and at the end I'll polish him up and get him smooth. But yeah, so far so good. I use these soft mesh sanding cloths for skulls because I find paper is not too abrasive, but it's too harsh. It doesn't have the curves like this stuff. You can really get in there and get a nice smooth contour without forcing shapes into the wood that weren't there before you started, basically. I find this stuff is nice and abrasive but kind to the wood. You can feel what you're doing through it. Get a really nice smooth clean surface. Then like any sandpaper, I'll go through the grits. This is 120, this is 80. I go right through, I don't know, 4, maybe 600 on this task. I don't like wood too smooth and shiny, I suppose. It's a bit like when I'm working with stones. I don't like highly polished stones. It just takes the soul out of it, if you know what I mean. It just looks cheap, overproduced. I like to see a matte finish, a little bit of character, a bit of feel to it. So when you touch it, it doesn't feel like a polished, shiny surface. It should feel like a piece of wood. It should feel like a stone. So very rarely one to get too carried away in the polishing, because you can soon lose that tactile quality that these materials have if you over polish it, overproduce it. Well, sensibly I should have a dust mask on really, but that's an old story. Right. Well, I sanded to 120 grit, which is a rough finish. That leaves us in quite a good spot to stop today. I think I'll get back tomorrow and we'll get the sutures cut in, which again is a characteristic of skulls that many forget to add, to be quite honest, which is a shame, because to me I think they're a very beautiful feature. If you miss that out of your work, you're definitely doing half a job. There's 29 bones make up the human skull by the time you get to my age. A lot more than that when you're born, but they gradually fuse together and join. I can't say I add all of the bones when I do this, but I like to show the main joins. It's quite a nice element to add to your work. Gives an extra branch anyway. Yeah. Call that done for today. Tackle more of that tomorrow. Right, we're back to it today. As you can see, I've added a little bit of texture, which I hope to add more today. So I've started on the suture lines, which I'll pinpoint and detail a bit deeper and a bit crisper, and then raise or lower one side or the other, because they're very rarely a neat join like that. There's usually a step where they've fused, so we'll add some detail there. And I've got various details to add the nerve holes and stuff in the face and jaw. You should start to look quite realistic. As I said earlier in the thing, I often create my own tools. I'll make them to suit if there's a particular shape or job I need. I make the tools as I go. I write roughly what they are on the side, so when they're on the desk and I've got the visor on, I can quickly identify which tool I need without having to zoom in and try and see what the shape of the point is. But as you can see, they're all made to purpose, depending on what I wanted that particular shape for. That one's a piece of fox bone, there's a piece of antler. I usually pick up whatever's on the desk or underneath it and bodge a tool together, use it once and then put it in the bag there, and forget I've made it and usually end up making another one. But yeah, these are just some of the many tools that that'll be handy. Actually, I'll use that one later. So yeah, that's a little insight. But I'm going to carry on with this, dig in, get deep into these grooves and start getting the texture in. Well, there he is. Detailed him all out. Give him textures. Added all the detail I want. So my next plan is to soak him in water, which may seem counterintuitive, but it helps. That'll lift any loose grains up and just expose those, and the next polish should get him properly smooth. So I don't want him shiny, because if you look at his counterparts, none of them are shiny, so we're just going to get it smooth so it's tactile, and later when it's dry I'll wall that down, cool that down. Now usually on Boxwood I'd oil it, just give it a lick of wood oil, but I think in this case that's going to yellow the wood and make it the wrong colour. I think it looks better in dry white finish. Looks more bony that way, so yeah, I'm not going to go mad on the finish, but quick douse with some water and he'll be ready for the next stage. That'll do. Didn't need much of a soak, just enough to wet the wood. Any loose fibres will ping into shape, come to the surface. For a quick wipe down with some wire wool. He'll be done. It's the end of day 8. I'm going to call it done now. I've smoothed it but not polished it. You can see the beauty and structure of the grain. We got these cracks, but Boxwood, you're always going to get that. I see it as part of the charm of the material, really. I mean, those cracks were there when I got the piece of wood. It's not a problem. They're not gonna go anywhere or do anything now. It's just part of the character. Nothing only ever adds to a skull if you've got cracks and details like that. I don't see it as a problem, so not gonna do anything with those. I mean, you could seal them and fill them, but it's like putting something in a door jamb and then try to shut the door. It's only going to split somewhere else. So if there's a hole or a split, I always leave it. That there was a branch that grew out the side of the stem but died, and it had been encased in living wood. So as I've carved, I found the dead knot in the middle, so I've left that as well because I think that's a beautiful little feature. I'm not looking to eradicate everything it ever was. I want it to look like a piece of boxwood. I want it to hold some of its original charm and history, really. It's nearly 300 years old as a piece of wood, so it doesn't deserve to be stripped of everything it ever was, in my opinion. And again, I'm not going to fix the jaw on this one. Sometimes I'll put hinges and springs in the jaw, but I like the idea that it is just a skull and a mandible, and it's more like nature. You know, we've got springs in our jaws when we're lying in the dirt. It's as nature intended. So yeah, I'm gonna toddle off down to Brighton next week. This is going into a gallery down in Brighton, and or Hove rather, and it will be on display there, and it will be for sale, so if anyone wants to go and have a look for him, there will be. But that's why I've signed this one. I signed him in the Atlas joint. It's very rare that I sign my work, to be honest. I just don't. I don't think my name matters. You know, this will still be here in 1,000 years' time somewhere. Who I was will be neither here nor there. That won't matter at all. But the skull will remain, which is how nature and the wider universe intends it. So yeah, I have signed this one, but only because it's going in the gallery. Usually I wouldn't. So it's really good. I'll go and wrap him up, get him ready for his trip out next week. Afternoon all. Right, down in Brighton today. Come down to the gallery, Whistleblower Gallery in Hove. I brought a skull down with me, so that's going in the exhibition this evening, and there's a private viewing, so I'm going to be here for that. First time I've been down here. It's really nice. So yeah, I brought the big skull I've been working on, plus another one I've had on the shelf for a couple of years. So yeah, put a little collection together, and they're going to be on display. So if anyone's around between now and middle of November, pop along and have a look. I ended up naming him Urbanus Magnus in the end, which is Latin. Basically it means fantastic city or magnificent town, which, you know, kind of fits with Brighton. But also I named him that because he was carved in Beccles, and in the medieval times there was a monk who wrote a book called Urbanus Magnus, the Book of Civilized Man. His name was Daniel of Beccles, so I've named him Urbanus Magnus. So it's a little nod to Beccles, where he was created, and yeah, I mean, it's called the Book of Civilized Man, but there's a lot of things in there which are not considered terribly civilized today. I think the 13th century was probably a little different to this one. Yeah, some very strange advice. But it's a curious and interesting read if anyone's ever got hold of a copy. But yeah, so I'm just waiting for the check-in. I'm going to find a bed for the night, and then I'll head down to the gallery this evening and we'll do the private viewing. So yeah.
he was desperate to basically...
So there's an old lady in a chair, but
You don't go pushing them
not
around.
pushing her around.
So there's the end result. That's been a couple of weeks' work there, so I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed carving it. And thanks for listening to all the waffle. Any questions, comments, queries or concerns, drop them below, and you know where to find me. So see you later. Cheers.